to dream, the will to hope, which leads me to our next segment, our featured segment, the Russell Legends panel discussion. But I can't do it without my ace. I got to have Paul Bryant, our H.J. Russell and Company's Vice President of External Affairs. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Lenoya.
Hey, it's so good to be with you again.
Oh, yes. This reminds me of podcast days. How are you
I-
doing?
I'm doing good.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate with you with this panel today. I mean, we have four superstars that have just spent a number of years with the company, and it really kind of makes me feel small. I've only been here for 6 years.
I
You
know.
know, how
I
about
know.
you?
8 years, I'm still a newbie.
So between the both of us, we have 14 years. Well, I look forward to hearing the wisdom and knowledge that these long term, valuable employees have to share with everyone today.
That's right. That's right. So, everyone, sometimes when we sit in greatness, we take it for granted, and we may not realize the extraordinary shoulders that we stand on. So, it's always good to do a reminder, just to check yourself from time to time. The purpose of today's panel discussion is to share a bit of history about Herman Russell and the company he founded with others. The Russell legends are employees who worked directly with Mr. Russell and have been working for the company for decades, and they've seen it evolve. They have a unique perspective on our foundation as a business and how our 70-year history relates to and impacts our present and future. So, Paul,
Well, you know what? This is such a great panel. People don't want to hear me, they want to hear them. Let's get right to it. The first person that I'd like to introduce is none other than Claudette Hanks. Hello, Claudette. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you this morning, Paul?
Yeah, you know what? I am great. You know, one of the things at H3 Russell we talk about is that this is like, welcome to the family. And I want you to know that COVID, just being away from the office, I really miss seeing you and Pam every morning when I come in. That warm, friendly smile just illuminates, makes my day coming in. So I just want you to know it's a personal pleasure being here with you today.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
And you've been with the company, what? How many years?
It has been 35 years.
35? My
35
goodness.
years.
wow, wow.
Wow. So in that
Yes.
time, do you have any specific personal stories with Herman Russell?
Yes, I do, Paul. This journey has been a pleasure for me. I've had the opportunity to start out in Alabama. I've worked in North Carolina, South Carolina, and now I'm in Georgia. And when I first started with the company in Alabama, one of my stories that I tell often is my first week in the Birmingham office. I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Russell. I was the assistant for the office and I was receptionist. I was at the front desk. He came in, he spoke, he asked me my name. He asked me, how do you like being here? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? And I told him that I liked scheduling. And the first thing that he said to me was, okay, well, I'll be back next year and you will be back in scheduling. And from that point forward, it made me recognize you give strength to what you focus on. And that's one of the lessons that I have learned from Mr. Russell is to continue growing, development, and my biggest competition is Claudette Hanks.
Mm.
Mm, wow, what a deep lesson. I remember you telling me that story, Claudette, and that was so touching. So I do want to introduce, without further ado, though, our next panelist, and that is Elaine Ubakama, Vice President of Human Resources and Payroll. Everybody, Elaine has also been here over 30 years, 34 years to be
Oh.
exact.
Mm.
Thank you, Lenoya, and good morning, everyone. Yes, my journey with Russell began almost 35 years ago as a secretary. And for me, what lessons have I learned from Mr. Russell? They have been many. But one that stood out most particular helps me to be who I am today and how I care for an employee. And that lesson is handle with care what has been entrusted to you. What that means for me, and what I, as an example, I work with a manager that reported directly with Mr. Russell. And the way she was treating an employee was outside of her policy. And whenever she wanted to do something, I would remind her of our policy. And over time, she got irritated and went to Mr. Russell. So Mr. Russell called me in a meeting with her and his other business partner, and he sat me down. And he wanted to know why I was not doing things as this individual wanted. And so I said to him, I said, Mr. Russell, I said, I can do what this lady wants, or I can operate based on our policy and make sure that I handle with care what has been entrusted to me, and that is to treat our employee with care, walk in their shoes, and make sure that we follow our process. The meeting didn't last very long. Mr. Russell looked over at them and he looked at me and he said, that's what I want to hear, meet and adjourn. And so for me, that was a great lesson because it helps me over the year to make sure that I'm able to walk in our employees' shoes. I care for them and they know that they're cared for when they come in that regard. Another quick story, we had a situation where we had an IRS audit and our legal attorney was panicking and Mr. Russell called me in his office and he sat me down again. And I thought he was going to talk about the audit and he'd start reminding me about where his beginnings were. He reminded me, he said, I started this company and before I even started, my daily meal was beans and rice. And I was like, why is he telling me the story? But again, he was helping me to see that he wanted to make sure that I was doing what I do well. And I told him after that story, I said, Mr. Russell, I said, I have nothing to worry about because I have been working with excellence as if everyone was watching at all times. And he looked at me again and he said, that's all I wanted to hear. And we never had a problem. And so, again, many, many lessons learned from Mr. Russell. But again, for me, those are the things I treasure as I operate on a daily basis. We had that audit, and guess what? They spent a year with us, and every penny was accounted for, every T was dotted, and every I was there. So again, when we do what we're doing with as if someone is watching, we don't have to worry about what someone else may come behind us and look at. So back to you, Lanoya.
All right.
Wow. You know what? That was a great story, Elaine, that just leads right into our next panelist, Eddie Bradford, who was the CFO of the Russell Family Enterprises. And as a CFO, you had to work very closely with Mr. Russell. I mean, you're the money man. Uh,
Yes, that is so true. And he often called me to this office to inquire about things.
so, so, of the many interactions that you had with him, are there any that stick out that you would love to share with us during Black History Month as we look at his life and legacy?
Yes, Paul, there's one in particular that really sticks in my mind. You know, when I think about it, there are hundreds of them, but this one really sticks in my mind because on one occasion, I was in HJ's office and we were just talking, and I decided to ask him a question. And my question to him was, HJ, how do you feel about the administration's plan to raise income taxes on the rich? And his answer caught me by surprise. He said, Eddie, I don't mind paying more taxes if they're going to use those taxes to improve the lives of those less fortunate than I am. And I thought about it. I said, wow, that is a conviction for someone who's willing to pay more taxes to help those less fortunate than he.
That is deep, and it just, testifies to his character, and I think about other situations where, maybe some people aren't as generous, but I'm totally in on that.
Well,
But I,
Toya,
mhm.
it's one thing that he said often, and that phrase I will never forget. But he was extremely concerned about improving the lives of those less fortunate. I heard him say that time and time and time and time again. He was serious about that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And it makes me think about H.J. Russell and Company today, the legacy that he left with his children and his grandchildren. And I see it every day that I'm here.
Herman Russell cares.
Yeah, Russell cares. Russell cares. But we'll get more into that. I do want to take a moment just to introduce our last panelist, and that is Anthony Dixon. Hey, Anthony, how you doing? I'm sorry, AD. Everybody, we call him the infamous, the GOAT, AD.
Yeah, good morning, Lenoy. Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Morning.
Fine, 45 years though. Woo!
Woo!
The
Man,
GOAT.
you've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
working here longer than I've been alive.
Look. I was just telling somebody, there's going to be people on this podcast that weren't even born when I started working there. Wow, wow. That's okay.
Yeah,
I'm,
that's
I'm glad
right.
to still be around. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh, good health. It's always a delight to see you and talk with you. And I've called you in the past just to get, well, what would Mr. Russell do? And what would Mr. Russell say? And what was he like? And so now I'm glad to have you in front of all of us, and hundreds of people to tell us, about your most meaningful, experience with Mr. Russell.
Wow. I've got too many
Mhm.
to try to tell, but I was thinking about that as you were talking to everybody, and I want to agree with Eddie that Mr. Russell never forgot where he came from, and that was most important. But as far as the story, Lenoya, I can remember once Mr. Russell took me to lunch with him at the Capital City Club, and as we were coming back down Peachtree Street, we went by one of the iconic buildings here in the city. And I told him a story, and he didn't know that I knew this. I said, Mr. Russell, I remember when this developer came and wanted H.J. Russell and Company to build 191. Okay, not Beers and Holder, but H.J. Russell and Company. And that was a story that happened with the bonding company, which I won't bring up. But he looked at me and he said, Anthony, I didn't know that you know that. I said, Mr. Russell, I watch everything you do. And and he eventually went and took and shared the risk, which was one of the things that I guess I could remember most about Mr. Russell. He was big on spreading the risk and keeping the risk off of him. And so they came up with a joint venture where H.J. Russell had 25% and Holder had 25% and Beers had 50%. And 191 was developed. And I can't tell you all the other things that Mr. Russell said at that time, but he just was amazed that I knew things and watched him as much as I did. So uh, he's a real icon. I was blessed to be able to have been given a job in 1977. Little nappy-headed boy from Alabama came over and got a job with H.J. Russell and Company. I didn't even know who H.J. Russell was. Now my daddy did, and that was amazing to me. I didn't know my father read as much as he did, but I try to read as much or more than my father did. So I know a lot. Well, no, I won't say I know a lot. I've been exposed to a lot.
And for everyone, the 191 building is what I call the Twin Towers
Right.
in downtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street. So yes, we built
One
that.
of
Yeah,
the iconic structures that makes the Atlanta skyline.
Hmm.
absolutely. Oh, I could name a number of them, but I won't. That anyway. Go ahead.
Shoot, AD, one of the things that I admire about you, just like you say you watch HJ, to a certain extent, I watch you.
Uh-oh.
And I just see when you come into company meetings or, just the way that you carry yourself and the way that other employees look at you and ask you questions and listen to your comments with such reverence and respect. Do you feel that? Do you know that? And in some ways, is that something you picked up from Herman?
I will say yes. Mr. Russell was very humble. If
Mhm.
most of you that have been around over 2 to 3 decades realize that he was a very humble person. I can remember, and I'll tell you this story, and I'll be real quick. I took my wife to a dinner that we had been invited to, and she was sitting there, and she said, "Honey, where's Mr. Russell? Where's Mr. Russell?" I said, "He's sitting next to you." She said, "You kidding? That's Herman Russell?" Because he was so and he was so personable. You know that, and so yeah. To answer your question, uh, yeah, I've learned to be humble, and it's best to be humble as opposed to be arrogant and proud and stuff like that. And so I try to carry myself in a humble position.
Mm.
And as Claudette said, my biggest issue and problem is me trying to make sure I keep me from being in the picture.
I like to talk to the other panelists also. I know we talked about lessons learned and all of that, but I'm just really curious, and this is for everyone. Um, Most people nowadays, they don't stay at jobs, or companies long. And long, I would say, like, what, Paul, what was your statistic
Four
that you
years,
how long?
4.4 years and 1 month is the
That's the
average.
average.
Hmm.
So, and when I came in, I know there were different reasons why people had stayed so long, but what what was your number one reason for sticking it through for so long? Because I know that, the company evolves, ebbs and flows, up and down. So what was your stick, what do you call it? Staying attitude? Don't speak all at once. I'm asking everybody, yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and start, Lanoya. One of the things that stick out in my mind that I keep in front of me is my experience. When I started out in Birmingham, Alabama, the leadership team, I still stay in contact with them. One of the things that they always promoted was team. One time we had to work a week on a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday on a bid. And what I saw and loved about being in that Birmingham office was they took on the role of the team. They came in, they made our copies, they answered the phone, they made phone calls, and they went and got the lunch. And they let us know that we were appreciated. And of course, we won the bid. It is the Civil Rights Institute in Birmingham, Alabama. It was and still is an awesome experience. And I tell people all the time, it's not how you feel, it's your experience. And if you have a team that you let them know, I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do, and that you are valued and you are at the table, that makes you feel like you belong and you're being included.
Mm, wow, that's deep. That's a
And
great.
Claudia, I can agree with you. One of the reasons I stayed at Russell was when I started, I was young. I'm a first generation American, and so is my husband. And so we had a family, and Russell allowed me the flexibility to be able to care for my family because we didn't have other family members around. But for me, one of the things was the opportunity to learn and to grow. I didn't have much education when I started. Didn't I had an associate degree, but Russell, at one time, we used to call us Russell University because anyone that came in, they know Russell will equip you, train you, develop you if you didn't have a plan. And today we continue that legacy, because we recognize as an organization without a plan, you're possibly living in someone else's plan. So for those who come into our organization today, we have already developed in place a career path for each and every one if you don't know where you need to go. We want to help you to get there. And we want to make sure that we continue this and help you and come alongside you and develop you in that regard. So for me, that created the opportunity for me to grow, to learn. And over time, I went back to school. I wanted to finish my degree before my daughter got hers. So when she went off to college, I started mine and got my bachelor's in HR at that point in time. So Russell afforded me that opportunity, and not just that, I continue to grow and develop and evolve with the organization, and so everyone here has the same opportunity to do that. What I say to you, don't wait for the opportunity to present itself. See what needs to be done and do it. Otherwise, when the opportunity presents itself, you'll miss out. It's like this: you don't wait for game time to practice. You practice before, and so when opportunity comes, you can step into it. And that's what Russell meant for me and why I stay.
And I guess I'll go next, Latoya. One thing that uh, I wanted to mention is that Herman Russell took a lot of time, particularly with me, and I know he did it with a lot of other people too, to mentor. And this goes along with what Elaine was saying. He wanted you to learn from experiences, regardless of what type of experience that was. And I remember on one occasion that I don't even remember what I did, but Mr. Russell uh, sort of read me the riot act for whatever it was. That was okay, because after he got through reading me the riot act, he sit down with his compassionate voice and said, "Now, Eddie, I'm not just jumping on you to jump on you, but I just want you to learn from this so it doesn't happen again and you can grow from this experience." I mean, he cared enough to make sure that I understood the purpose in which he reacted the way he did. And that meant a lot to me, to know that he cared enough to make sure that I learned from the experience.
And then Eddie, I guess in my case, I again I got stories like crazy, but I can remember one. Mr. Russell called me into his office and told me that was a competitor, not a competitor, but a client that had come to him and told him they wanted to hire me away from him. And he told me, he said, "I know they want to hire you, but uh, don't you go nowhere, don't you?" And I just sort of looked at him, and then I can remember one other time we were in a claim, and he told me, he said, "Look, don't you take one wooden nickel from them folks, okay? You hear what I'm saying? I'm not going to bow down to anybody." And we won the claim. It was, I think we got something like 60% on the dollar, Eddie, after about 5 or 6 years. But I was at the pinnacle of that. But the reason I did not leave is because, number one, I've learned years ago, grass is not green on the other side. And I wanted to be somewhere where, as Mr. Russell said once to somebody else, he said, "Anthony's not going anywhere. He loves the place too much." Well, you know, I just like the people that I was working with. I like my people. I like where I was, and all those other places that wanted to hire me were not like me. And I knew I would have been just a number or something else. And as my father told me, he said, "Boy, look, that company can hire you and send you all over the world. You'll probably end up in Indonesia somewhere. And then when they get through with you, and if you ain't had any sense, and saved your money, you won't be able to get back home." And and I thought about it because that company that wanted to hire me did go and build some buildings in Guadalupe, uh, and Southeast Asia, Southeast Asia area, and and that was that. But H.J. Russell has been a place where I felt like my influence and my abilities would be appreciated, and then I'd be able to give back, and I have, a number of people that I have influenced and helped and have gone on, and I get excited about that. So it's been a great place to work, and it's been a tremendous journey, and I just appreciate Mr. Russell, his wife, Danita, and Jerome and Michael, just for keeping me around, and not just keeping me around, allowing me to work. Because Mr. Russell demanded excellence,
Yeah.
and that was one thing I learned about him. He got on me once, and then I'm gonna shut up. he he got on me once, Eddie. I never forget this. And he said, Anthony, I know exactly what you're doing. You trying to keep that sub's money to make him do what you want him to do. But you understand this. You listen to me. That's my name out there on that marquee. Okay, that's my name. And you don't mess up my credit. All right. You hear what I'm saying? And I said, yes, sir, Mr. Ross, I understand. He said, now do what you I know what you're doing. But but do what you gotta do. And he and don't you ever not answer a letter. Okay. I don't care if it's just you send back receipt acknowledged. But he said, uh, a little old lady can call me on the phone. If she calls, I'm gonna answer the phone. And for those of you that knew him, you see Mr. Russell sitting up in the office late in the afternoon. He would be answering phone calls that people had made to him. He was big on that. He responded to people, and that's why people knew him. That's why people respected him. That's why we become the iconic place that we all work at.
Mm,
Hmm.
wow. Wow.
Wow,
That's deep.
that
Yeah.
was in my role of external affairs, I get a lot of opportunities to, meet with groups and talk about the legacy of, Herman Russell and this company. And basically just listening to your stories and thinking about it, what I'm really doing is I'm talking about you guys because right now you are the living legacy of this company. And I was just wondering, what does it mean to you personally to work with a company that has such a great legacy? I mean, because sometimes I share the stage with a lot of our competitors that may be larger, much larger, but none of them have the legacy that we have at H.J. Russell and Company. And that's something I'm extremely proud of. And I'm just wondering, how do you feel about that? And that's to all of you panelists.
Well, I'm gonna start off. I feel about it very passionately because Mr. Russell never forgot where he came from. And I don't know if many people on this call know of Mr. Russell's humble beginnings. And we went to the same university, and I've read up about him and read a lot about him. And to be able to walk in the shoes of somebody who did some things that, quite frankly, Paul, I, I would not have had the opportunity to be working where I have if it weren't for people like Herman Russell and John Lewis and a number of other people there back during the 50s and 60s. So I just really appreciate the mere fact that I'm able to stand there. I remember what Bob Holder said about Mr. Russell at his funeral, and the fact that he was born 3 miles away, but everything that was set up for him was for him to for Bob Holder was for him to succeed. But every other thing that was done, particularly back then during those days in Jim Crow, was designed for Herman to fail. And the one thing that Bob Holder said about him, he said it wasn't that I couldn't trust Herman or didn't like him and stuff. He said my problem was I couldn't keep up with the man.
Mhm.
And you know, and it was true. Mr. Russell had a passion for excellence and for doing the right thing because he knew where he came from, and he never forgot that. And so that's the one thing that I am so appreciative of, to be able to work in a position and for someone who uh, did just like Eddie said. He wanted to be able to make sure that people less fortunate than him had the opportunity to succeed. And Herman was always about that.
I would say for me, it is truly a blessing and an honor to serve this great organization and to be able to continue to stand on the shoulders of those who have gone on before me as a part of our organization. I want to say thank you to Michael and the family for giving me the opportunity. This is never, ever in my wildest dream an opportunity that I would ever have said I envisioned for my life. But one of the things I learned from Mr. Russell, again, as I'm sitting here listening to all of you, is don't allow the no's to stop you. When you truly believe this is what you're called to do. One of the things Mr. Russell would say, and I've learned from him, is if the front door is shut, find the back door. If the back door is shut, find a window. If that window is locked, find a chimney. And basically, what I learned from that and helped me through my journey is to see that to be faithful and diligent over what you've been given. And we recognize in life we're going to have no's, we're going to have challenges, we're going to have difficult situations. Stay the course. Challenges are going to come, but guess what? They come to let you know what's on the inside of you, who you are. And together, we as an individual, as an employee, as a body of workforce, we can continue to build and leave a continuous legacy for those who are coming behind us, the next generation. And for me, that is an honor and a privilege that I get to be a part of. And it truly is a blessing.
Well, I'll add to what has already been said. It's been great working for a company and for a man who did not limit you. You're only limited by yourself. And if you're willing to undertake something and do what it takes to be successful at it, HJ was willing to allow you to do it. And I think we already heard about the focus that he had. When he focused on something, it was like an eagle on the wing. When an eagle focuses on something, you can pretty much be assured that that eagle is going to accomplish that. And that's the type of focus that HJ had. He had that eagle laser sighted focus on things. So when he told me years ago that he was going to put a hotel across the street, and I sort of looked cross-eyed at him, well, the hotel is there now, and so many other things. The amount of forward thinking, the amount of visionary that he had, and so forth. To me, he proved that you can do what you set out to do if you just simply focus on it. Focus and do the work that's necessary to accomplish it. And I'm just glad that Donato, Jerome, Michael have that same spirit. And as long as you're willing to focus, you're willing to do what's necessary to do it. They're willing to allow you to do that.
And Eddie, I think I'm gonna close behind you and say again, you give strength to what you focus on. And Mr. Russell gave strength to H.J. Russell and Company. He provided us with an example of what excellent looked like, what it felt like, and what it meant. And again, like as everyone has said, I appreciate our founder. I appreciate Michael, Danita, Jerome. They have continued that foundation. And I am grateful and I'm privileged to have grown and developed and learned. And I do believe any place else, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to work again in Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, and now I'm in Georgia. I wouldn't have thought that. I thought I would still be in Alabama. But I am grateful that I have learned, that I've grown, and I appreciate each one of you as we grow as a team.
Yeah, now I gotta say this. Wait, Paul. No. But I gotta say this. So Claudette grew up in Birmingham, Alabama,
Yes.
and I remember the story you told me about and when you were in, I think it was high school, and there was a test that you all had to take.
Well, there was a paper that we had to write.
Okay, but
Yes.
and I remember they said that like with your results, I think they told you you should be a what was it like a janitor or some
Yes, they told me that because of my where I lived,
mm.
the color of my skin, that I should not try to reach any farther than janitorial services.
And look, so now as the senior supplier diversity manager of H.J. Russell and Company, one of the largest black-owned construction companies in the United States, I'm going to ask you this question. What does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you?
What does it mean to me is fair treatment
Mhm.
and full participation of all people, and especially those who have been historically underrepresented. Belonging is more than just a word, it is about our experience. And what I have grown to learn is that it's not just about being in the room, but being prepared to be in the room. You don't have time to get ready. You have to already be ready. And one of the words that I like the most is bridging the gap between diversity and inclusion with equity. We have to be prepared, we have to be developed, and we have to be educated because winning the bid takes more than a signature. You got to be able to do the work. And it's just not something that I do, but it's a part of who I am. I want them to succeed. I hear a lot of the subcontractors say, Miss Claudette, what do you want from me? I want you to succeed. I want you to sign on that dotted line knowing that you're going to come in on time and on budget. And before you do that, you must be ready.
I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion is an upgrade from where I started years ago, where it was really a statement called window dressing, where we were hired in positions and put in places just to say, oh, we have a minority that works for us. And that was the case. Well, diversity, equity, and inclusion is an intentional upgrade from many who are trying to do the right thing. Okay, I'll say it that way. And and it goes back to what Claudette said. It really means uh, having an intentional motivation to do those things. Some people will say that, but they really don't mean it. Okay, they won't have skin in the game. Okay, they won't really go to the point of actually being purposing to be diverse in their employment and uh, uh, principles, and to have equity, giving people opportunities commiserate with their training, background, exposure, and regardless of what their race is, and inclusion, uh, actually wanting you to be at the table with them. Okay, that's what that means to me.
I don't know if you all remember. Well, some of you may not have been around then, but HJ used to say often that HJ Russell and Company was like the United Nations. It was representative and diversity is all over the place. And he was proud of the fact that HJ Russell and Company was a company of diversity.
Let me ask you guys a question. So you've been here a number of years. You've rubbed elbows with Herman Russell himself, and by doing your jobs, you've helped build this company. You've helped build and structure the culture of this company.
Mhm.
What do you see as the future? What can you say to some of these people that are on here that may just have 1, 2, or 6 years with the company? As you see it, what does the future hold for this company, and what can we do to make sure that future happens?
I'll start off. I would say that starting with Herman Russell, he was a visionary looking forward into the future. He has instilled that visionary ability to his children. So, Donato, Jerome, and Michael are also visionaries and they're looking forward into the future. So as they look forward into the future, they're looking for people that can help them achieve that futuristic goal. They're looking for people who can help move things forward into the future. And for me, as well as for others here, we're glad to be part of that team that is helping to move H.D. Russell and Company and the other Russell Enterprises forward into the future.
And I think I would like to add with that, one of the things I'm always asking my team as, I challenge us for things is, what's, you know, what can we do with what we have and make it better and make it greater? Because if we, as we look at time, time continues. Um, I envision the next 30 years for us. So we're going to be celebrating 70 years this year. And so I'm seeing the next 30 years ahead where we having the next generation come in and move us into another era as an organization. So for us, from my perspective, we having others coming in with being innovative, innovators, that will see what needs to be done and continue to build on it in that regard. You continue to ask what's next. That's our theme for 2023. Our employee the next. Where do we go from here? And together, when we come together and collaborate, when we come together and put our heads together, what they say, one can put 1,000 to flight and two can put 10,000. So when we come together and work together, the sky is the limit. Russell, for me, it's going to take us where, for more and more into the future. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to working with those that are coming in and want to make a difference, want to give back, those that want to come in and just like Mr. Russell, have a heart for our community, have a heart for the people we're working with, and the partnership with our leadership and making sure that we're able to position ourselves with excellence, with greatness. It's in the inside of each and every one of us working for the organization today. And when you believe something, there is nothing that we cannot achieve. And that's where my heart is and what I see for us.
So Russell being Russell being a large company within the construction industry, how have you seen the industry evolve over time, especially from a MBE perspective, minority business enterprise?
Uh, it in one respect, it hasn't really changed much. In some regard,
Really?
well, hold on.
Oh,
I'll qualify that. Let me qualify that. Uh, and I say that from the standpoint that um, the opportunities that Mr. Russell used to say it this way: there should be 100 of him in this country with the opportunities that exist. And when I say that it has not changed much, the opportunities are not as great as they used to be, and it's a lot harder. And many times the goalposts is moved and the boundaries are changed and the rule books are changed. But you have to keep up. You have to keep up and stay engaged to make that happen. I thought you were going to ask me the question about how has the construction industry changed since I started H.J. Russell, and I was going to say we have gone from pencils on paper to pointers on computer screens. Uh, but but yeah, but for MBE companies, um, the opportunities are there. It's just a lot harder in my mind for them to be able to actually access and to gain those things. The economic opportunities, it's a lot harder for them to get. And Eddie's nodding his head, and he knows what I'm saying. To get a line of credit, to get an opportunity to be able to engage with a financial institution. There's some that will engage with you, but they're not fully, as Claudette defined equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't really have as much skin in the game. They won't give equal opportunities to a person that looks like me versus another person that looks like them, and that's where I say things have not changed as much. It's a lot harder, and one thing Mr. Russell did. This is why I mean this is really iconic. I appreciate you guys putting this on. Mr. Russell was not only prepared. Uh, People wanted him to do joint ventures with them, not because he was minority. They were amazed that he was able. He had everything in place. He had the bonding. He had his own limits. He had his own economics. He had, now this is most important, and a lot of people don't realize this and believe it, but he had people who could do the work. I mean, you just don't know the number of individuals that I have seen and been around and experienced who were engineers. I'm talking about registered engineers, black folk, uh, and they were able to do the job. And then people like me who had the opportunity to learn and be exposed and to go up the ladder, as Elaine said, and actually do the work. You know, we've torn down more buildings in this city that I have built than are probably still standing. That H.J. Russell and Company built, not because they were bad, but it's just what we do in this city. We build them and then we tear them down and build them, no, build some more. But H.J. Russell was been involved in all of that.
So, AD, is there any project of is there any project that stands out to you in your mind? Like, this is the one I worked on, or this is the one. Is there any particular project of all that you've seen? Hey, it could be in the concession business. I mean, what stands out in your mind that
I,
H.J.
I,
Russell's been involved with that you touched?
the M1 contract in 1977 at Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Every time I catch a flight, I'm riding on that train, and I said, boy, 40 years ago, I was crawling around in this tunnel, laying out these tracks and laying out things and putting escalators in and stuff like that, you know. And then I'm gonna say this. This is not to pat myself on the back, but I was coming back from Dallas here last week, and there was a person with me. I said, "Come here, I want to show you something." And there's a plaque that's got my name on it with a project that I did at the airport that's there between Concourse A and Concourse B, and talking about the team that I led. And the thing that was so encouraging, the city of Atlanta been trying to get this project up for 13 years. And I remember sitting in a meeting, somebody said, "Give it to Anthony, let Anthony have it." And in 18 months, 19 months, we had put it in place, completed it, and it's there now. And that's credit to H.J. Russell and Company, not to me. I mean, I work for H.J. Russell. Herman told me once that he said something. It's so funny. He said, Anthony, I forget what he asked now. I said, Mr. Russell, uh, I can sell me. I can sell myself. I said, but you know who I'm selling? He dropped his head. He said, I know Anthony, H.J. Russell and Company. I said, yeah, why you dropping your head? Chuck, I want to be here. I work for you. I am you. And so, and so,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so yeah, but to answer your question, Paul, I'm sorry. That airport, I did so much out there at that airport, I won't even tell you all this stuff. But that tunnel is my claim to shame. I guess I can say it that way.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
Lenoy, I'm gonna do something totally off script here. But
What?
if anybody listening here, if you find that plaque and take a picture of yourself with that plaque with AD's name on it, you send that to me, Paul Bryant at hjrussell.com. We'll figure out some sort of prize, gift card, something that special that we can do for you. Take you to dinner or lunch or something. But you
wow.
find that plaque and let us all see it. That would be wonderful.
And y'all, it's P Bryant at hjrussell.com.
You know,
I get it right.
I
You
tried
gotta
to
put it
throw
out
it
there.
off.
You gotta get it right. Claudette, AD, Eddie, Elaine, and of course my ace, Paul, Paul Bryant. Thank you all for joining me for this panel discussion. Russell Legends.